So I do think it's one where involving those engineers in the whole process is so critical.
Right.
And one of the things that I don't think people often understand is how it drives innovation. Like to sit down with some of the leading hardware engineers at the company, it's so fascinating as they show me how just by changing, for example, a fan, what that might do, or replacing a former plastic component with some other material, it really does drive more critical thinking and problem solving as well.
Welcome back to a special edition episode of What the Tech podcast. We're here at Cisco Live 2025 here in Melbourne. We're very excited to be speaking to another Cisco leader who is visiting ANZ from the US. So it's always great to have our global leaders here visiting the region. And so just to introduce our leader, Mary de Wysocki, Senior Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer. Cisco. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Can't wait to talk about all topics, sustainable and Cisco.
So we're just going to kick things off locally in Australia. Australia has set an ambitious goal, I suppose, on the global stage with regards to net zero by 2050. There has been a bit of noise from a political perspective around that, but that still remains the goal. So for technology leaders here, what's your advice on how to act in this environmental uncertainty? And when it comes to policy, and what should they focus on in the next few years?
I think one of the first things that you almost have to envision, what is that future that you want to look like? And I think when I grapple with that, I think about the fact that we've actually closed the digital divide. It's an area, right, that we're still trying to make that happen. I see it as a technology enabled world. I see it in a world that is leveraging AI to hopefully solve some of the thorniest problems that we're facing. It should be enabling us, right, to really deliver some amazing business outcomes. But I also see that future one that is also sustainable. And so when I think about the kind of the connection between technology and sustainability, or just even if we bring it back to AI, I think is a huge opportunity, whether for your country, whether for your own company or us as individuals. But one of the things we do know is it does require electricity. But quite frankly, technology has always required electricity.
Yes.
So I think that's one of the areas of thinking through AI. Energy to me, I just quickly come to power and in how we're doing that in a way that we're really driving energy efficiency, as well as thinking about what are some new forms of energy that we all should be investing in. So I think one of the things that I always think about AI and data centers. And one of the first things is how do you actually design that AI ready data center? How do you design it that's also really thinking through a resilient energy? So you could almost start thinking about it first within the data center.
Yes.
One of the things I am so proud about that we at Cisco have done is we committed to having every new product and packaging, including circular design, by the end of our last fiscal year, which was just at the end of July. And I'm pleased to say that we've audited, and yes, we've done that. And one of the critical things when you think, well, what does circular look like? It really is changing the way I grew up, where people would make something, we would use it, we'd throw it out.
Yes.
It's actually thinking about, well, how do you close that loop? So our design features start right off the bat with energy efficiency. How are we designing the next, the evolution of your product, that next Silicon One chip to deliver more output, but making it more energy efficient as well. But we also think about making it more modular, right? Where you're maybe just sliding out a card and replacing a new one or using software. Are you making it more easily assembled and disassembled? Are you thinking through just dividing out waste? One of the things that just simply not painting our switches, I mean, even that cost savings right off the bat and not as much chemicals in the environment. So one of the first things I think about is within that data center is how we're designing our products. I mean, the latest 8223 with the newest Silicon One chip, like amount of capability, the smaller footprint, as well as the energy efficiency, to me delivers that modern capability. But it's also how are you just monitoring it? I think one of the things I think about in the data center and then between data centers is a really interesting opportunity, right? When you think about designing in the intelligence to understand signals from the local utility, to think through, is there a surge coming? What can I do? Oh, a bigger demand. Let's move that workload someplace else. Or maybe let's move the software update to a different period of time. So the ability not only to send that demand and supply signals and understand what we can all do in our community, but also just observing it, that observability and the energy management. But then go all the way down to the grid where you can leverage like IoT, that industrial IoT. And one of our newest products is Unified Edge, right? All of a sudden you're taking that whole capability. Sometimes I think people think AI, it's only in the data centers, but quite frankly, it's moving to our devices as well.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's thinking through that beginning, the end. And this is where I would say for all of whether it's a company or the country or an individual, what's your current state? Where do you want that future to be? You mentioned 2050 for Australia. At Cisco, our commitment is 2040. So then what are those actions that are actually going to help you get there? And sometimes it's going to be just managing energy efficiency as much as you can. It could be looking at a building like this and are we designing it in a way that is smart, leveraging technology like power over Ethernet to turn on the lights. It could be everything from investing in new forms of energy. So I think it's understanding where you are. Really, what are the actions that help you get there to decarbonize or use circularity? Like how we do it together.
Yeah. Well, that's very inspiring. Like you explained it so well. Like it's so
Yeah, like
enthusiastic. Yeah.
so clear that it really sounds to me like Cisco has not only understand the delivery from a customer experience standpoint, but also the supply chain and in the impact that's actually happening at every touch point. And basically making sure that this sustainability is not only for what we're delivering now, but then how this can be even optimized and also so being more efficient for future releases and so on. And the fact that now we're integrating AI into the mix, it helps even Cisco to now not only being reactive, very proactive in how they deliver these solutions to the end users.
And this is one of the areas as technologists, I think one of the first things as we created this office and I started thinking through what is our strategy for 2040 and 2050. And the first thing I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? And I had to take a step back and go, wait a second. What do you think the technology is going to look like in 2030, 2040, 2050? So that's part of, to me, one of the interesting roles of being a sustainability leader is you're going to imagine what we do today to help our business to make our communities more resilient. What are we doing to help young inventors, those innovators, imagine new forms of energy?
Yeah.
A good one that we as a company invested in is a company called Core Power Ocean. Imagine a buoy, a really big buoy in the ocean, just going up and down constantly. That creates a form of energy connecting it back. So I think that's another area where we as technologists have to not just think about what I know today, but imagine what we need and how then do we start investing so that it's economically viable and available when we need it. I think one of the things that people don't always understand in the sustainability space is how do you assign responsibility to your carbon footprint, for example, is the greenhouse gas protocol. It's across your entire value chain. So right off the bat, you're creating an interdependency from everything from the group that maybe finds that mineral to who manufactures it, who ships the product, ultimately to the customers who use it, our partners that install it, how we take it back. So right off the bat, I think the interdependency creates that sense of partnership. I think as we then grapple with one of the most important things to me at Cisco is how we find the talented innovators of today and tomorrow. Do you know where they go first when they're choosing where they want to work? They go to our purpose report. Why? Because I do think they're looking for those organizations that are delivering some really fascinating and interesting technology and innovation, but they also are looking at what do you believe in? And if we make a commitment, are you actually showing progress? So I do think that's one of the areas where I see our early in career talent and young people often looking there. Then we've got interesting employee resource groups. We call it the green team around the world, where they're looking at ways that they can think through whether it's helping us design our products and how they think through our communities. One of the critical parts of our strategy is all about creating that resiliency in the community. So I do think I look at every different way that you can identify those kind of ideas, those technologies, whether that's through a large global challenge. One of our large partners is an organization called Global Citizen, which actually the founders came from Australia. And they actually, it's all about how do you create actions? How do you help citizens take actions against whether it's alleviating poverty? In my area, it's all about really thinking through that kind of climate future that we're looking for. So we have an annual award there. Really interesting, whether it's a new business model, it could be regenerative agriculture, it could be a new technology. I think it's everything from sometimes investing in a great idea that was in a university lab. A good example through our foundation is an organization that a mineral called Ali. If it was put on the beach and it was weathered in a lab, it looked like it could absorb gigatons of carbon. It's called an organization called Vesta. What we ended up doing is using our grant money for them to do the research in the field. Happened to be, for those people who are familiar with New York, the Hamptons, which is an interesting beach community, but that's another great way that we as a private sector company can take an idea from a lab, put it in a real environment to see, is it absorbing the carbon as we thought?
Yeah.
Is there any implications to biodiversity or sitting in the ocean? So that's another really critical idea, taking an idea in the lab, doing the research, and often that first customer.
Yeah. So enabling and empowering. Yeah. And you talked a lot about resilience. Can you unpack that? Because I think people, when they think of resilience, they don't really think ESG. Like, how does that work together?
I think when we were really designing our strategy, and we called it actually the plan for impossible, because we really do believe that we can create the future, this inclusive future for all. And it started with the first part being how do we continue to transition to cleaner energy, this concept of embedding circularity. I knew technology could create resiliency or helping communities adapt. And you can look at it from two different angles. I thought about it from the lens of shocks. You can have an economic shock. Do you have the talent? Are you helping train up young people? All of us, as we're now thinking through this new AI world, are we helping understand how it's going to change the top in demand IT jobs and proactively develop the skills and the capabilities for adjacent roles?
Yeah.
But you can also look at it from the environment side. We've all experienced weird weather, severe weather, and there are amazing technology, whether IoT or Internet of Things devices out there that can provide more early warning or can provide more information, whether it's great information that will allow us to know where we should do land management to prevent wildfires, or just more data that will allow us to know, is there really a carbon capture or carbon sink, which could create more nature-based jobs. So when I think about resiliency, this is really recognizing that change happens. And how can we help that community adapt to the shift in AI and what that might mean to your job, or how do you lead? how we can think through this weird weather or provide more information to communities to quickly adapt. So to me, resiliency at the kind of community, I think about technology and adoption of technology. I think about, are we providing the basic human needs? What is the role of government and policies in shepherding that, right? I think there's a whole area, digital resiliency is here as well. I kind of started with how do we close the digital divide? I mean, it's
Like it's out here. Technology literacy, before we used to talk about financial literacy, now it's technology literacy.
exactly, as especially, and I think this is a critical part because I do think we're already seeing this within Cisco. It is changing the way we work. It's leading the way we lead. Imagine the next time we meet, and we're sitting here is a digital twin, who can now handle 24 hours or provide the kind of assistance. I happen to be dyslexic. So I use it often now, the technology, to help me as a New Yorker be direct but diplomatic. Or how can I take a lot of information that would have taken me years to figure out and really provide that first level of analysis. So I do think that the more we in a community can anticipate that this is another major transition, how do we help the communities thrive in that as well?
Oh, yeah, that's really great. And then now, if we dig a little bit more over the time that we spent here at Cisco Live, there's been a lot of talk about AI factories, etc., and like you mentioned, the data centers. So, how do you think about growing that kind of AI infrastructure without, like you mentioned, blowing the carbon budget? And what's one way Cisco's technology is evolving to help that?
So I think, again, it starts right from that very beginning with how you design your product. And that's why the circular design principle, specifically the energy efficiency capability, is so critical. I think when you really start down this path, that's why even when you think about circular design principles, you have to define what they are. How do you train your engineers? How do you
That was actually my next question. How do you get the engineers involved?
So it's really working with them to actually define every single one of the design principles. Then generally you build out an education program, you start piloting it, then you start scoring every product against it, then you audit to see how people are doing. And then once you've hit the goal, then you start to give out V2. So I do think it's one where involving those engineers in the whole process is so critical. And one of the things that I don't think people often understand is how it drives innovation. Like, just sit down with some of the leading hardware engineers at the company. It's so fascinating as they show me how just by changing, for example, a fan, what that might do, or replacing a former plastic component with some other material, it really does drive more critical thinking and problem solving as well. So I think it starts right there off the bat. And why our engineers, they may be experts at modern infrastructure and security and collaboration and building out AI, but you know what? They're also expert at really driving energy efficiency. So to me, you start right there. I also think, though, when you look at the opportunity in front of us, this is the challenge whenever you have the next generation of technology. Generally does more and having it more energy efficient. This is also where helping our customers understand the criticality. Sometimes that upgrade is required because it's going to provide more capability. Sometimes it's because we need and have to have that more secure infrastructure as well. Because I do think you probably heard today, right, as we think about where you first thought at CPU and then multiple CPUs in the data center, now as it starts scaling out and now you've got the unified edge, right? One of the things you're going to see is ever more critical of making sure that it is secure. You've got more points of vulnerability.
Yeah, exactly. And like your attack surface expands very, very quickly. And so, what about organizations who haven't really thought about sustainability being something front and center for their engineering teams? Like, what would you say would be an approach for change management for that? If somebody embarking on a journey like that.
I mean, often what we'll do, I think sometimes it's just introducing a new team a new individual because they were all experiencing. I think this is one of the unique parts about environmental sustainability is we all feel it today. If you haven't had a severe weather in your backyard, you did, or I did. I think that we are all seeing the amount of, in New York City, for example, just last week, we had 1 inch of rain in 10 minutes. What did that mean? Our subways were flooded, right? So I do think this is an area where we all understand. The question is helping people connect to what they can do.
Yeah.
And I think this is where helping the engineers understand, and we'll share all that we've done often. And I think you have the engineers, whether it's the hardware or the software engineers that are building in energy management, but it's also those system or sales engineers as they're designing it in the field. And I think sometimes I'm introducing a slightly new language. It's a new value driver. It's a new value component, helping them understand that it is important to often their executives, that C-suite, and just connecting the dots.
So basically just making sure, giving them that care factor.
Yes.
Care factor.
And helping them understand the role they play
play.
and they can actually design it. That's why when I see these engineers, if you think about, to me, energy efficiency, right, has always been a total cost of ownership for a technology leader. So I think it's just adding maybe the next layer of going, oh, by the way, let's think about reducing waste. Let's think about making it more modular because we can just more easily remanufacture for maybe customer two. All of those are just giving them more problems to solve, which a lot of these innovators just love solving problems.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're empowering your customers as well. Like you said, that's all about the value chains. Like,
And quite frankly, this is where when I look at our 100 hardware customers, I look at what they're requiring. This is why at the end of the day, it is a customer requirement. They're looking for the business outcomes. They are looking for the ability not only to maybe lower their energy costs, making it more energy efficient, but they also often have goals, public goals around environment as well. There are regulatory requirements around the world. And one of the things that we hear a lot from our customers is they want to understand what is the carbon footprint for this particular product or the full life cycle assessment.
yeah.
And so that's one of the things we work very closely with our partners is as they think about migrating from maybe a current state to the future state, the ability to provide that as just another part of the RFI, RFP is critical.
Yeah, so that means the customer don't only have to, it's not only Cisco being ESG aware, it's also their customer, which help the entire ecosystem.
At the end of the day, I think about where we all live, work, and create. There are some jurisdictions where what the local regulatory environment is asking you to provide information. So I think it's really thinking through all the different ways that you can explain the value of your solution.
Yes.
Whether it is from the bandwidth or the analysis or the security or the ability to create a really interesting workplace, the hybrid work, the collaboration. There's also a whole element on whether you design your product to be as circular as it can be, right? Or as energy efficient as possible.
Yeah. Oh, this is such a fantastic conversation. We could continue going, and as you awesome hearing from you, Mary, and just how Cisco is really like taking charge and leading in terms of sustainability and how it's embedded across the business and with your customers. So exciting times to come, and hopefully we'll get to hear more from you. And even though you're based in the US, hopefully you'll be visiting more often for the great weather.
Absolutely. As well as we can leverage WebEx and have more conversations, especially as you tap into your rich network of innovators that we all want to encourage.
Yes. Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.